For many years, Jay Leno made people laugh all over the world. But behind the bright lights and loud car engines is a quieter story. One not told through jokes or cars, but through love, loss, and never giving up on someone you care about. It's the story of a man who built a career making people laugh and now spends his days trying to help the woman he loves remember the life they share together. There's a special feeling that comes with seeing Jay Leno's face. For many years, that famous chin and playful smile filled living rooms across America. He was the man who made millions of people laugh before they went to sleep. The gentle voice of late-night comfort. The host who never seemed to get old or tired. But behind all those smiles and funny stories, behind the shiny cars and the roaring engines, there was always one quiet constant in his life. His wife, Mavis. Today, that same face still smiles, though the story behind it has changed and is something much more human and delicate. Because as Jay Leno continues his journey through show business, he's also walking through a much more personal one. Taking care of Mavis, the woman who once knew every part of who he was, and now sometimes doesn't recognize him anymore. It's a story that many families know too well, but few talk about. It's the slow fading of memory, the kind of sadness that doesn't happen all at once. For Jay, a man whose life has always been about remembering jokes, names, and punchlines. Watching someone he loves lose those things has changed his world in ways that being famous can't fix. And yet, there's no sadness in the way he talks. When Jay speaks about Mavis, it's never with sorrow, but with a kind of patient love that can only come from knowing someone for a really long time. He still jokes with her. He still makes her laugh. In a way, the comedian has simply found a new audience, one that he loves more than all the others. It was sometime in the mid-1970s in Los Angeles at a small smoky place that every struggling comedian knew, the Comedy Store. Jay was there, as usual, working through his set, testing out jokes that didn't always make people laugh. He wasn't famous yet, but he had that energy about him. Mavis Elizabeth Nicholson, as she was known then, wasn't there for comedy. She was a writer, smart and strong-minded, and the idea of getting married had never appealed to her. Friends had brought her out that night, telling her she needed to meet people who knew things. Perhaps someone who could give her a writing job, or at least a little inspiration. She went along without really wanting to, not knowing that she was about to meet the man who would change everything. As Jay came off stage that night, he noticed her sitting near the front. She had this calm confidence about her, something that immediately interested him. Later, he would say he wasn't very good at dating, that he never knew what to say to women. But Mavis, she was different. There was no act between them, no awkward small talk, just a sense of comfort. For Mavis, it was equally unexpected. She had always said she would never get married, that she wanted her life to be about her work and independence. But when Jay walked over to her after the show, something clicked. It wasn't fireworks or movie-style romance. It was quieter than that. A feeling that this was someone she could trust. Someone who didn't make her feel small or less important, but who made her laugh without trying. Their first conversations were simple. Comedy, work, life, little things that seemed to go on forever. Jay wasn't rich or famous, but he was steady. He had this strange habit of saving every penny, of not owing money, of planning for a future he couldn't see yet. And while Mavis didn't think much about money, she loved how secure his mind was. Within months, they couldn't be separated. They move at their own speed, not the Hollywood kind. There were no public displays, no headlines, just two people figuring each other out. When Jay finally asked her to marry him, it wasn't in some big fancy place or with a film crew watching. It was quiet and personal, just the way Mavis liked it. They got married on November 3rd, 1980 in a small ceremony that fit them perfectly. Simple, honest, and full of laughter. For Jay, it wasn't just about love. It was about finding someone who balanced him. I always look for qualities in women that I don't have, he once said. And Mavis had them all. She was well-spoken, knew about politics, and deeply cared about causes that mattered. He was a mechanic at heart, obsessed with engines and timing. Yet somehow it worked. Over the years, Jay would become famous, becoming one of the most recognized faces on television. And through it all, Mavis stayed out of the spotlight, happy to build a life that was theirs alone. She had no desire for fame. But that didn't mean she wasn't busy changing the world in her own quiet way. While Jay was busy climbing the late-night ladder, Mavis was already building something. In interviews, Jay never failed to give her credit, not just as his wife, but as his anchor. He once said, "Every guy should marry someone smarter than he is." That's the trick. Even when Jay's fame brought chaos, Mavis grounded it with perspective. When the Tonight Show controversies happened with the handovers and the headlines, Mavis never played the celebrity wife. She stayed home, kept things calm, and made sure Jay came back to reality every night. As the years went by, the two of them seemed untouched by the usual Hollywood wear and tear. They didn't age publicly. They just lived. And for Jay, every moment but dementia isn't something you can fix. It's not a flat tire or an old engine that just needs more oil. It's the slow unraveling of memory. A thief that steals pieces of someone bit by bit. Court documents later showed how bad Mavis's condition was. Her doctors explained that she sometimes no longer knew her husband's name or even her own birthday. For those who had seen her sharp, well-spoken, and politically active for years, it was heartbreaking news. Yet for Jay, it wasn't about grief. It was about duty, about love that doesn't need to be recognized to still exist. He became her conservator, a formal term that simply meant he was now responsible for her care and money. In interviews, Jay described his new daily routine, not with sadness, but with a quiet sense of purpose. "It's basically what we always did." He said, "I take care of her. We watch TV. We talk. We laugh. The only difference is now I feed her, too. But I like doing that." That's the thing about Jay Leno. The humor never left him. But it changed. When he talks about Mavis now, there's a softness in his tone that the old Tonight Show host never used. He still makes jokes, but they're the kind that come from love, not performing. Jay Leno has always been a man who liked to keep things simple. He never bought into the celebrity lifestyle. And perhaps that simplicity is what's helping him get through this stage of life with grace. He doesn't talk about Mavis' illness as a tragedy. In his words, "I enjoy taking care of her. She's the most independent woman I've ever known, and I just couldn't be prouder of her." For many, becoming a caregiver to a husband or wife is one of the hardest roles you can imagine. It demands patience, emotional strength, and a never-ending sense of compassion. But for Jay, it's become another act of love. He cooks for her, helps her with daily tasks, and keeps their home filled with laughter. He's managed to keep humor alive in the smallest ways. On one occasion, he laughed about how Mavis insisted on buying a pair of designer sneakers worth hundreds of dollars, even though she rarely leaves the house. "Now I thought, if she's going to walk around the living room, might as well do it in style," he joked. Their house has become a safe space of familiarity. They still watch television together every night, old movies, game shows, things that spark recognition. He'll sometimes replay old episodes of The Tonight Show or his famous headline segments. And Mavis will laugh without fully knowing why. But laughter, after all, doesn't require memory, just feeling. It's that emotional memory that Jay treasures most. Even if Mavis can't recall their wedding day, he can still see the warmth in her eyes when she hears his voice. That connection, however fragile, is enough. When asked about how he copes, Jay's response is almost like a wise saying. "You make a promise when you get married," he said. "You say in sickness and in health. This is part of it. You don't run away when it gets hard." There's no pity in his words, no bragging about himself, just straightforward love. He doesn't focus on the word dementia. To him, Mavis isn't defined by her illness. She's still the woman he fell in love with at that comedy club all those years ago. She's still his best friend, his